Welcome back to part 3. This is a pretty common question. What's the difference between sentences and periods? First, let's take a look at what's similar about them. Both are usually 8-measure structures. They are phrases that can be part of larger forms, like you have binary form or ternary. Even in sonata form, rondo form, you can have these smaller structures. Both of these 8-bar phrases can be divided into 2 subphrases. For the sentence, that's a presentation and a continuation, first 4, second 4. And for the period, that's an antecedent and a consequent. So what's very difficult for most people is to remember the difference between continuation and consequent, mostly because they sound so similar. For me, I like to think about with the sentence, I have the presentation, here's the basic idea, here's the basic idea. I'm going to continue to flesh out that basic idea. That's where I get those fragments, so that's where I have a continuation, and I'm gaining momentum to get to that cadence. For the period, antecedent and consequent, I think of it like a question and answer. Here's your question, and then you end with that weaker cadence, which is kind of like a question mark. Like, I want to go on to something else. It's not like the end of a sentence quite yet. So here I get to my consequent. That is the answer to my question here. And then I can end with that stronger cadence. A sentence doesn't really even have different types. It's just what's going on with the basic idea. So the basic idea is repeated in measures 3 and 4, but we can also be a little more specific and say, is it repeated exactly where measure 3 and 4 comes back exactly as measures 1 and 2? Or is it varied where measures 3 and 4 comes back transposed up or down a step? For the period, though, we do have 3 different types. We have parallel, sequential, and contrasting. No matter what the type is, it does not change the fact that there's a weaker cadence before the stronger cadence, 1 in measure 4 and 1 in measure 8. What does determine the type of period you have is how measures 5 and 6 come back. So if measures 5 and 6 come back exactly like 1 and 2, then you have a parallel period. If they come back pretty similar, like the rhythm's the same, you can recognize it from the beginning, but it's transposed up or down a step, then you have a sequential period. So thinking back to what we're talking about, transposing up or down a step, we do that in sentences as well with the basic idea, but it's in measures 3 and 4. Here, when we're transposing, we would do that in measures 5 and 6 for the period. And then lastly, contrasting. Measures 1 and 2 and 5 and 6 do not share the same melody. So we can have some music here, and then when it comes back in 5 through 8, it doesn't really remind us of the antecedent at all. And you're probably thinking, well, if it doesn't sound the same, then how do you call that a period? Well, again, it depends on the structure of the cadences. We have equal 4 bars with a weaker cadence, another 4 bars with a stronger cadence. That still has that same basic structure of a period. Another confusing issue besides just the names sometimes of those second phrases are the repetition. So with a sentence, the repetition comes in measures 3 and 4, but in a parallel period, it comes in 5 and 6. So let's listen to the difference between those two. Here's the sentence version where the basic idea is repeated. Also note there, we did not have any kind of cadence after that second basic idea because it's exactly the same. We're not really ending on anything. We're just continuing into the next section. And then with the parallel period, like I mentioned before, we still have that basic idea, but in a parallel period, we have different music in measures 3 and 4. So that is going to be more like a contrasting idea, or you can just leave this out completely and just call the first 4 measures the antecedent. So this is what the parallel period would sound like. So hopefully you heard the difference. We had that 2-bar basic idea come back right here in the consequent. So if you were to just highlight that, we would have it right here. There's that basic idea again. It's repeated in measures 5 and 6. We also have that cadence that happened right after in measure 4, which we did not have up here after the basic idea. So you see how we're using that same basic idea twice, but we're changing where we're putting it. Here in the sentence, it's directly after that first basic idea. But in the period, it starts the second subphrase. Along those same ideas, we can have a basic idea that's varied in a sentence. We can also have a sequential period, and they're basically doing the same things. The varied version, we go up a step here when we repeat the basic idea in measures 3 and 4. In the period, the sequential period, we started on E flat and do basically the same thing we did in the parallel period. But when it comes back in the consequent, we have the same rhythms, but we are up a step there as well. So let me play both of those for you to compare. First, here's the basic idea of varied. And then the sequential period. So again, up a whole step here, E flat to F. Here we have E flat to F, beginning of each phrase. Beginning of each basic idea, 1 and 3. Beginning of each subphrase, 1 and 5. So that's the big difference there. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Please come back to this often because it's really easy to get them mixed up. I know that. I even forgot sequential period the other day. I was thinking about contrasting. I was thinking about parallel. Don't tell my class that. But I didn't remember sequential. Sometimes you just need to jog your memory because there's a lot of terms in music theory. So it happens to the best of us. But once I realized what the term was again, oh yeah, I remember what that is. So just keep coming back to these. Go back to the individual videos about sentences. Go back to the one about periods, just to make sure you got it down. Because I know we have lots of exams out there and this should help, hopefully. So thank you again for watching, and I will continue to post more informative concept videos as I think of ideas. But if you have ideas, please leave them in the comments. Thank you.